Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon. This over here is Brendan here, who's being the trooper today. He's a little under the weather, but I appreciate him coming on in here for our weekly appearance here on the channel. Brendan, I know you're fighting through a little bit of a cold, but aside from that, how you doing today?
Aside from that, things are going pretty well, I'd say. I can't complain too much about anything. Being sick is part of life.
It is, especially in the Pacific Northwest when you have all that air, that's wet air. It seems like the right conditions to get yourself sick all the time when it starts getting into
Mm.
that wintry weather a little
Well,
bit.
I don't think it was anything here that got me sick. I got sick when I was in Vegas. So something down there.
Oh, what happens in Vegas doesn't stay. I'm just
Mm.
kidding. Well, hopefully you're able to bounce back here, and we're gonna try to get this as just kind of a quick in and out show here a little bit. It's never anyway. It's fun to turn over loss, but with Brandon a little under the weather, we're just gonna kind of spin through this a little bit and take a little bit of a final look here at this Carolina Panther game. Brendan, a disappointing game, one where we really feel like this year we've had a lot in our control. And, the injury situation's been good. You've caught teams at the right time, usually. Injury situations usually in a good situation as far as they're down some guys a lot of times. But another game here where you're looking at it and going, shoulda, woulda, coulda. You really felt like coming into this game, you should come out with a win here, and not maybe running it 2-3 touchdowns forward, but at least to come away with the win. But Carolina kind of took it to you on both lines of scrimmage. What was your takeaway kind of coming out of this game from some of the main things that stood to the forefront of your mind?
Well, I think the big thing that I came away from that game thinking was this team is making us as Seahawks fans kind of bipolar. That's the only way I can put it. It feels, and it doesn't feel like this should ever happen for any team where you start the year and the first 5 games you're one of the worst, you're probably the worst defense in the league and you're one of the worst defenses ever, and then like a light switch just suddenly goes off. You're the best defense in the league for a month, a solid month, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess we found some magic bullet that just fixed everything. And then for the next month, now it's now been a month since that stretch, you're back to being the worst defense in the league again and one of the worst defenses in NFL history. And my whole time watching this game, I was just kind of thinking to myself, this is not the way it's supposed to be in the NFL. You're not supposed to be able to go from being literally the best, or excuse me, the worst to the best to the worst again like that. Like, it's
Mhm.
not like after every game you have to release your whole roster and then come up with brand new players. It,
What do
it,
you?
it shouldn't be like that, right?
Well, it shouldn't. But then that brings the question to mind: what's the explanation for that from your standpoint?
I can explain some of it, but I can't explain a lot of it. I can see where, like, okay, this last game, I understand we were basically down our 2 best defensive linemen, right?
Hmm.
Because Shelby Harris gets scratched, Al Woods leaves in the second quarter and doesn't come back. Okay, I kind of get some of that stuff, but it's just I, I I know it's weird, right? Because as a Seahawks YouTube video maker on the internet, as somebody who's out there trying to put out good Seahawks content on the internet, you want to try to make sure you're not overreacting to every little thing. That's for the other, you want to be the voice of reason. You
Hmm.
want to be the guy who's like, "Oh, okay, I understand that everyone had a really bad reaction to that game or even that one series or that one quarter, but let's keep everything in perspective. Let's calm down. Let's look at this from a more rational perspective." But when your defense goes from the worst in the league and you're like, "Oh, we need to fire these coaches, fire Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's terrible." And then the next month you go, you're suddenly like, "Oh wow, we're figuring this stuff out with Pete Carroll." And then the very next month you're going, "Okay, we're back to the old stuff. Let's fire Pete Carroll. I hate Pete Carroll." Da, da, da. You do sound like you're just as irrational as the rest of them, but
Yeah.
what choice do we have when you look at the results like this? Like, how can we react in any other way? This stuff just doesn't make any sense. And to try to put some sense on it, I think that these teams have figured out that, hey, just run the ball up the middle on the Seahawks, force Cody Barton on the field at all times. Like, that's been the big difference during that 1 4 game stretch when the defense was playing really good. Cody Barton wasn't on the field that much. And I think teams eventually realized, you know what, let's just force Cody Barton onto the field at all times by going, big, by not putting a lot of receivers on the field. Like in this last game in particular, the Panthers almost never forced us into nickel. I think they used 2 receivers for a majority of that game.
Yes.
So I think they've kind of figured that out. I think our lack of talent on the defensive line has caught up to us. But there are these other things too, like for example, just as an example, we basically decided we're only going to really utilize 2 edge rushers. We're going to give all our snaps to Nwosu and Irvin, and Taylor and Mafe are basically just picking up whatever garbage snaps are left. Like we're only going to put those guys out there when we absolutely have to. And that's something that we're doing. That's not something that other teams are forcing us to do necessarily. I know Irvin and Taylor and Mafe are both flawed players, but it's just very odd to me that we've decided to basically make both of those guys complete afterthoughts. That's nothing that other teams are doing to us. That is something that we are doing to ourselves.
Yeah.
So there are a few different ways where I can make this make sense, but there are a lot of areas. There are a lot of areas where this stuff just doesn't really make sense to me. And I'm trying like it would make sense for like, okay, you might have a really good defense, but then they have one game where things go really bad, right? That happened all the time. The 2013 Seahawks had a couple games where they were just bad. It would also make sense for a really good defense to have a game where like there a few games where they're just okay. But to go from worst to first to worst again, like they're just driving us crazy right now.
Yeah, and I think you sum it up well in the respect of this is a very complicated issue, and a lot of times people look for the simple answers in this stuff, even when it is eminently complicated, like this thing is. And there's a lot to take into account. You mentioned a few of the things being, well, the run that you had that showed you glimmers of hope that this is what this will look like when it's right, to the, okay, well, now maybe it's just a fact that we don't have the right personnel and talent, which is the thing I hear very much out there in the Seahawks fandom land, being that it's, well, we just matter of talent. We just got to get the talent better up front in the front 7, and then it'll be all fine and good. I think that where the worries come in that are very valid on this situation, and to not overlook it. And it's not to necessarily to put a spotlight on this to say, well, it means Carroll has to be fired or he's not right. But the reason why this goes beyond just this back and forth of this year, and then it's not a sample size, is because of the fact this has been a problem for the last couple of years. And this sliding back and forth defensively where you're not finding any consistency. And when I look at Brendon, let's take the last 2 years where the defense has turned it around. Last year at the end of the year, and then that 4-game stretch this year where you had those games you did. Last year at the end of the year, you were playing some really bad teams at the end of the season, teams that had no chance at the playoffs, teams that were out of it. You could kind of go at those teams, being at Detroit at the time or the Texans at the time, and it was kind of a get-right game for your defense at that point. I think you had a lot of games at home at the end of the season at that point too on top of it. So it was a little bit of a mirage in what it showed you. And I would offer you that these 4 games this year that had the same thing happen was a bit of a mirage. You played the Cardinals twice, whose offense has been terribly inconsistent this year and can't run the ball, so they couldn't attack you in the way that these other teams could. They weren't built to do so. And then you had the Giants game and the Chargers game. And in the Chargers game, they're down pretty much 2 of their best 2 wide receivers, the best left tackle coming into that game. Another team that doesn't exactly run the ball as consistently as some of these other recent teams. And then you have the Giants who do and are able to run it consistently. But in that game, Seattle could really, I think, press down on Daniel Jones and really lock in on Saquon Barkley and keep him kind of hemmed up at that point. But to me, that's what that looks like as much as anything, is that the defenses, when it has in the last 2 years, when the returns have been there, you can almost always go to look and see it's on the back of playing a porous opponent. And you're going to have those games throughout the year. You get to play that kind of opponent, that's not good. And there'll be a collection of those games throughout the year. But I think the important point for us in looking at this now is to not take those 4 games and say, this is what they actually are, and actually look and go, no, that's what we can do if we play bad bottom of the barrel offenses. That's what we can do. What happens when we play somebody that's even middling? And that's where this is, to me, something that is an issue here going forward. And it does go beyond, to be Brendon, just a matter of adding more talent up front, because I think that there are schematic shortcomings with this defense. I don't think they've implemented this cover 2 shell in any way, shape, or form outside of just adopting in some of the 3-4 looks. They're still rocking those 2-man fronts, Brendon. I mean, I saw a couple times in this game, you ran those out and it got gashed by the Panthers in the running game. And I just go, why? Why at this point in the season are you still doing that? It hasn't worked for, and this is the problem, is they're not adjusting. They're not changing. They're not trying new things. They just kind of keep doing the same stuff like we've been seeing for years now of just, here's the same thing. Here's, how about now does it work? How about now does it work? How about now does it work? It's just not working, and they're not changing. And that's, to me, again, having more talent will help. But Brendon, I don't think that's an end all be all fix here in this situation.
Yeah, yeah. There are multiple layers to this for sure. I do think there is a problem with talent, but I also have to look at it and go, okay, well, you can still make the best with what you have. And also, as for what you just said about the level of opponent, like that during that 4-game stretch where the defense was playing really good, you were playing substandard opponents. I would even say that this defense has struggled against like the Bucks offense has been one of the worst in the league this year.
Mm-hmm.
Their offense is terrible.
Yeah.
And I mean, they basically didn't score against the 49ers on Sunday. They basically they needed the whole game to get anything going against the Saints defense, and you gave up plenty to them. We played the Rams with all the injuries they have. They have one of the worst offenses in the league. They did fine against they did fine against us. So we've even regressed from that, where okay, you're looking at like that Giants game. The Giants don't have a very good offense. Yeah, you stop them. The Chargers were in a very injured state when you played them. I understand all these things, but then I'm like, okay, we're not even playing well against good offenses bad offenses now.
Yeah.
So something's changed, and I feel like part of it is just like the book is out on this defense, where teams have just figured out, just run the ball. They can't stop the run. They're not even really trying to stop the run in a way. And when I say that, what I mean is there was this one play, I think, on the Panthers touchdown drive that basically ended the game in the fourth quarter, where it was 3rd and 2, and we came out in a 2-man front. And I remember watching, just thinking to myself, at this point, why not just intentionally jump off sides to give them the first down? You may as well. You know they're going to run the ball because that's all they've been doing the whole game. Darnold, they're basically not letting Darnold do anything because they know he's going to mess it up if he throws the ball too many times. So why not just jump off sides at that point? Just let them have the automatic first down. Like it would be no different. So I don't know. Here we are in week 14, and we're still doing that same stuff, and it really makes it hard to stand up for. It just makes it hard to stand up for some of these coaches anymore, like this triumvirate of Carroll, Desai, and Hurt. Like, it makes it really hard to just stand up for them in any way. It felt like we had turned a corner, but now I think we're starting to learn that, well, I don't know. I don't really know how to make sense of the defense going from this bad to this good to this bad. But it really makes it hard to believe that they're the guys who are going to lead this defense to any kind of greatness, even with better talent in the future.
Well, that's where my questions come in at this point. And I don't, like you said, I don't know what to think. It's kind of what you're saying with it. There's times with I myself am turned a little bit in different directions on this and trying to figure this out. I do come back to the thing with we need more talent stuff. It's like, well, the same head coach here who's going to be calling for need more talent on his defense is the same guy that's been stocking his defense to the 9s for the last 3-4 years. So, we've been pouring assets into the defensive side of the ball, from 1st-round picks to Jordan Brooks and LJ Colliers to 2 first-rounders for Jamal, 5th round even for Quandre Diggs. You're paying market prices every turn to get these guys in, and they're still underperforming. And I do feel a little bit like, as I watch this defense, because it's so simple, Brendon, it doesn't put always the players in a position to succeed. It doesn't take advantage of anything schematically to give them an edge out on the field. It's just relying on guys to ball out there, just run around and be awesome. And that's great if you got the talented guys that can do that. When you don't have the talented guys that do that, then the coaching staff needs to manufacture ways to get some production from those guys. And I don't see him doing much of that with defense with Coach Carroll. You mentioned the 2 guys that remain on the bench. I mean, that's 2 second-round picks and a 3rd-round pick worth investment in Darrell Taylor and Boye Mafe, who probably carved out about 21 snaps in this game. While your 35-year-old Bruce Irvin goes out in the field and outperforms those guys. But I should have faith on you to be able to target the next edge rusher when you're not able to get these guys going forward or in the right way. It brings a lot of questions up. That I thought were going to maybe be able to be tampered down as we got that 4-game winning streak where, okay, well, maybe they're starting to kind of figure this down and through. But I do think it is a little bit of you faced the light opponents at the right time. You caught some injury situations right, opponents that couldn't beat you in the way that you're vulnerable to. But I also don't think that you go out and get Deron Payne and Jalen Carter here, and this thing is just, now solved defensively. Maybe you're better defensively, but Brendon, we're talking about this and getting to this to a play of being elite again, right? We're not talking about getting to a place of we sneak into the back door of the playoffs every year, right? That's not the goal here, is to get to that stage. And I feel like if the schematics are where they're at right now, and you're running 2-man fronts and you don't want to blitz and you're making your coverages soft and easy to pick apart, kind of doesn't matter with the talent on you have at that point, absent having Hall of Famers across the board, you're going to be a best case scenario middling, even if guys are kind of balling out at that point, in my opinion. Am I off on that, or you think that's pretty close to the mark?
No, it's completely fair. Like this game, we came out that first Carolina drive, the first, I'd say, several Carolina drives, and I'm noticing the flats are wide open. And over again, Carolina's throwing the ball into the flats and getting like 8 to 10 yards because there's nobody around the receiver. And I'm just thinking to myself, come on, guys. We're playing the Carolina Panthers. They have Sam Darnold, a quarterback. Okay?
Yeah.
If he beats you over the top, then oh well, so be it. Why are you not trying to take away the short stuff that Darnold's going to be one of throwing the whole game? Why are you trying desperately to defend the big play when the Panthers might not have more than 1 or 2 big plays in their entire playbook at this point? That's a team that wants to slowly grind the ball down the field, make a bunch of easy completions, run the ball, and just avoid turnovers. Why are you even giving a second's thought to, we have to prevent the big play? It's like you didn't game plan for the Panthers. And we see these games constantly where one team just where a team will come into Seattle or we go there or we go to their home, and it feels like we didn't really game plan for them. We have this one generic game plan that we always go in with a coaching staff like that. How are you ever gonna have success?
When there's so many great coaches in this league that do get those advantages, right? We're going to face one this week in Shanahan, who doesn't need the top of the top talent offensive wise to make it productive. He's not a perfect coach in that element, but that's what I need from my coaches at times, is you be able to help your guys out, not just ask them to flail out in the middle of the ocean and learn how to swim. Teach them how to swim. And I don't see that. Where's the growth from the young guys coming in here? A guy like Uchenna Nwosu it was already, the die was cast. He was what he was coming in. He's had a great year, but that's not an example of the coaching staff taking some guy and guiding him forward along. Meanwhile, we have a lot of guys that have not grown in their game over the years. I mentioned LJ Collier or Jordan Brooks or Cody Barton, who's maybe played a little bit more solid recently, but overall this year has still not been good. Poona Ford, right? Just you go down like Brian Monet, all these guys that whether it's draft picks or it's money you've put into them, they're not developing and they're not coming along. And it's not like somebody else chose these guys. Carroll chose them. Schneider chose them. These guys, this is who we want. This is who we want to pay money to. Here's the future on our defensive line is Poona. The future is Brian Monet. I'm worried about it on that aspect big time going forward, Brendon. And I unfortunately, I think this is going to remain a question through the offseason. I think it's going to be something that we're going to have to turn over a lot. And my only hope at this point, Brendon, is just maybe that it took 2 years to get them to wrap their brain around the offense and doing the Waldron's offense and the McVay offense. Maybe so too is it taking 2 years for Carroll to wrap his head around. I need to do the full cover 2 Fangio stuff. I can't just kind of side it a little bit, halfway, and that's blind hope at this point on my part though, Brendon, because I'm not seeing the signs of it.
I don't think he has any reason to acknowledge that, because there's no heat on him, right? There's no opportunity for him to lose his job, right?
No.
It doesn't matter what he does for these next few years. He can't lose his job. It's basically impossible. So what motivation does he have to do anything differently? If you ascribe meaning to a coach in that, performance incentive to whether or not you might lose your job, right? Like your motivation to improve your performance is that if you don't, you might lose your job. Then if there's no fear of you losing your job, then there's no motivation for you to change or improve your performance.
Agreed. And I don't think he's in any position to want to do so. I just don't understand why he's reached that point, because even him acknowledging last year at the combine, we've been arrogant in our ways. I need to change what I'm doing. We've been holding on to this thing for too long. I mean, this is what he said to us this offseason is the things Brendon and Brandon are saying out there on YouTube is, Right. Yes. We need to change some stuff, but we've gone right up under the line. They've pushed it up. They've gone to the 3-4 defense, but just not pushed back over because your observation of them playing to the safety of the deep ball in this game, I could have pulled my hair out watching it. Do you remember the play they showed an all 22 shot of the game at the time? And it was a 3rd and 3 there with Ryan Neal. And Neal, it's a bootleg out to the tight end in the flat is the play. And Neal's on the tight end, heads up at the snap, but he's there to first take away the run play, right?
Right.
And then they run the bootleg, and they showed it on the telecast in the replay. Neal flips his hips at the snap and just sprints backwards as far as he can go towards the end zone that way. And you can see Quandre Diggs on the left hand of the field also sliding back, like they're dropping into a cover 2 on 3rd and 3. Do you remember that play? And like, that was what it really was like a crystallized moment for me of like, we're worried about the deep ball in this game on Darnold on 3rd and short. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. We didn't game plan for the Carolina Panthers. We game planned for the Kansas City Chiefs. We game planned for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
But we definitely didn't game plan for the team we were playing. It just felt like we had a generic one size fits all game plan that we just threw out there and assumed that it would get it done. And I don't know. I mean, I tried to do the Pete Carroll thing earlier this year when things were going a little bit better. I was like, okay, maybe I need to be a little more open-minded here. Maybe I need to, I'm trying to see things from a different perspective. But I at this point, I don't know how you can do it. It's just so bad right now. And it's not a thing where you can say, oh, well, it's early in the season, let's give them some time to get together. No, I mean, it's week 14 and things are worse than ever.
And it's not a one season thing here, folks. For those out there that may be going, well, it's just this year, or it's only the 2 sides of this year, but there's a 4-game stretch. It's 3 years of this. It's 2020. You were on a historic pace to give up more yards in the air than any other defense by like week 9 or 10. And you found a way, a lot like last year, playing some lesser opponents, so you weren't pushing that mark. Then last year you were going to give up a record amount of yards to running backs out of the backfield and what they caught there. And you gave up a franchise record in yardage. This year, we're due to break that franchise record amount of yardage that we've given up as a defense. This is a multi-year problem, and it's gone even further back than the 3 years. So it's not a situation that's just sort of blipped up on the radar this year. It's been blipping and blipping and blipping, Brendon, and he's not adjusting. Carroll's not changing it. And it's not to say Carroll doesn't have a good aspects he brings as a coach, Brendon. He does. But this is the conundrum for me, is that those good aspects get overturned if you have a defense every year that's going to be 30, 31, or 32 in the league. That's the way that goes. And I can't understand how he continually keeps looking at this and goes, okay, it's broken. I'm going to keep trying the same thing. Okay, it's broken. Let's keep trying the same thing. Or these little tiny minor adjustments. 2019, we're going to go base defense the whole year. But we're still going to run the soft zones. We're still not going to blitz a lot. But now we'll have 3 linebackers on the field instead of 2. And that's the kind of like half-hearted adjustments they make that it requires a full measure serve at this point, Brendon. And they're not doing it. I don't want to belabor the point, but it is, I think, the most important thing with this team going forward, because this is going to be a big determinant on whether or not we can be an elite team again, or whether we're just going to be a middle of the road team that can kind of barely slide into the back door of the playoffs every year.
Yeah. I mean, all I can really say is that Carroll had better be grateful. Had no idea how grateful he should be, probably, that Wilson's playing so bad this year. Yeah. Could you imagine if all this stuff was happening and Wilson was having some MVP type year?
Oh, Lord. Yeah, that would not be a good thing. And I think in your point on that, that's almost as much as anything that helps him keep his job beyond anything that happens on this field, is because they've come so outright on the other side of the Wilson thing, where it looks so much like who's going to be the right guy last offseason. And it's definitely looking like Carroll and company are the ones coming out kind of smelling like gold, looking like gold on that, which will probably help him keep that job. But
yeah. And by the way, it's something he deserves zero credit for. That's the thing. We all know that Pete did not want to trade Russ and was devastated to have to do it. And it was Schneider who actually wanted to move on from him. But he gets some piece of that now too. So, at least he has that going for him. But man, we're back in that mode where it's just hard to believe that anything good is going to happen.
Yeah. And I do think there are things he brings to the stage as a coach that are great. And I think he can build an atmosphere and he can get guys to play relatively hard. But you just can't have these holes in your coaching game in this modern era. Set yourself kind of behind the 8 ball every game, where every game we're going to get out coached on the other side, basically, at least defensively. Our guys might ball out, make some plays at some point or get some interceptions, but from just a pure us coach versus that coach, they're going to out chessboard us in this particular game every single week. And that's very hard to set your team up like that every single week. It's one thing if it's a back and forth where some weeks you win it, some weeks you lose that chess match, but it's like every week we're dropping the queen and it's like, well, checkmate, good game. You know. Come
Right.
on, guys. Come on. Dell is the fittest with a $20 donation. Dell, thank you so much for the $20, man. Coming in hot. I appreciate that. He says, Brendon, like I told Hawks Nest, I believe Pete isn't a great coach, but a good coach. Reason being, he doesn't make adjustments when you need to, and other coaches take advantage of it. Pretty pathetic, you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they don't really make adjustments. And at this point, what is left to call him a good coach? What is left there? I mean, there's this idea of, oh, he gets these players to buy into stuff, but I'm not seeing that right now. I got to be honest. I'm not seeing. I'm seeing a group of players that right now isn't really listening to their coach. Some of them are, but especially on that defense, which we know is Carroll's side of the ball. Like, I didn't even see good effort on Sunday. I saw bad effort. Some of those tackle attempts, like, I think our tackling probably had the worst game of the year against the Panthers.
I would
That was
agree
probably
with
the
that.
worst effort we've had tackling. There was that one play where they ran I think it was a bubble screen. The receiver fell down when he caught the ball and he still got 8 yards because Jordan Brooks just basically ran past him instead of tackling him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't even know if I can say that anymore.
And this is backed up by Bruce Urban saying in the press conference, not everybody's bought in right now. And until everybody buys in, we're not going to ever get there. And that's a reflection back on the coach. When a player in the locker room saying, we don't got everyone buying in. Well, isn't that what the coach's job is to do? Isn't that what he's supposed to be doing? And maybe it's a valid thing. Well, what is he's bringing here? Is it game management? Is it the use of timeouts? I don't see it from that. Is it the use of challenges? I don't see it from that. Is it, what is he's bringing here? Is it the fostering of good coaching talent and letting them soar? I mean, a little bit with that, I guess, with Waldron, you can give him some credit there on that. And that's maybe the little bit that does give me some hope is that he did change so much of his ways offensively, Brendon, that maybe he can get around there on the defensive side too. I mean, this year you are throwing darn near 60% of the time. He threw 72% this last game, and old Pete would have maybe just hammered the ball into the wall for 3 quarters and said, let's figure it out in the fourth. But that's not enough in itself to give you hope on this guy in the future as the coach. When there are those holes in his game and they're kind of mounting a little bit at times here.
Right.
Appreciate you though, Dell. I think it's well said on that. The lack of adjustments are very obvious. I think what Brendan said too about how we play every team the same way. We don't come in and do anything different. Even when we try to say that we do like the Devontae Adams double team, that wasn't a pure double team. You didn't run press and then have the safety over the top and then the press man runs in trail coverage. You played off coverage with Mike Jackson and then you had the safety back over the top. Nobody runs double teams like that in the league. It was weird. It didn't work. Then it opened up the holes in the running game, supposedly for Jacobs. I don't know how much of that's the truth, though, Brendan. I almost feel like it would have run anyway, with the way that these teams are running on us. But it's worrisome, man. Thank you, though, Dell, for the big $20 donation, man. I really do appreciate it. BK with a $2 donation says, real tears after that game. Can we get in at number 2 pick? Well, thank you for the $2 donation. You think we're going to fit at 2 when it's all said and done?
I actually think that Giants-Commanders tie is going to screw us. That's actually how I'm feeling right now. Like, if the Giants had just lost that game outright, I think we would back into the playoffs, and our tiebreaker over the Lions would get us in over them. But to be perfectly honest, I'm kind of thinking that the tie against the Giants is going to end up screwing us there. I don't know about you, but on my end, when I'm looking at, my video comments, my Discord, a vast majority of fans that I've seen have basically they've kind of given up on the playoffs. They're already treating it like it's not going to happen, even though I think the playoff odds are about 58%. They've just like, it's not happening, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are just kind of in the mode now that like, oh, there's no chance. This team is way too pathetic to do what they need to do to get in. As for the number 2 pick, I think that's still likely going to be the case.
Yeah, the second part, I agree with you on that. I do think number 2 is where you're going to land with this BK. I mean, obviously the Cardinals losing Kyler's tough, but Colt McCoy's a decent backup quarterback. that they've got to play on that one. The Rams game's got Baker from Mayfield coming in there for the Rams, so they don't have their same kind of state. Maybe they'll be just strong enough to take that Denver team, especially now with Rippon, who might end up just being the quarterback all the way through on the rest of this year. So that's the one good upshot. I have a hard time seeing us get in as well. I think it probably takes 3-1 for you to get in. And I think you best case right now could get 2-2 on these remaining games. And I think a 2-2 doesn't probably quite get you in there, to Brendan's point on the tiebreaker situation. But yeah, just kind of hard to see. And I think I've seen the same thing with my fans. I think people are getting a little resigned to the fact of, okay, with a defense like this, how can you hope to get in the playoffs when you're losing to these kind of opponents who aren't as good as you, aren't as talented as you? How can you hope to get into the playoffs? And I think that it's a valid question to ask and propose. And I don't have a good answer for it. And I just think we'll probably have to wait on another year with it, which does suck because this team had, as I was speaking about the top of this, Brendan, we had a lot this year in our control to go out there and make a little bit of noise. I know we're understaffed. I know we're under-talented. But we do have a team that, if they could have gotten things a little bit more righter. And I wonder on two different fronts, Brendan, if you just stuck with the 4-3 defense this year coming into this year and waited to do the 3-4 change until you could actually bring the personnel to fit the defensive scheme you're wanting to implement, or go full house on the 3-4 defense and just run the Fangio stuff from the jump. How could this defense not be better than what it's shown if you'd gone either of those two routes from a coaching perspective of things?
I mean, all I can say about that is I think these players are just terrible. Like, I think that any scheme you put them in, especially in the front seven outside of, I guess, Nwosu, like, I think these players just suck. And I think that any scheme you did, they would have been bad. Maybe they would have been a tiny bit better than this, sure. But it's hard for me to believe a defensive line made up of these players is going to do anything positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I mean, I've seen Poona Ford at a one tech do okay. Or, I've seen Brian Monet at one tech be able to hold up the run game, and that having those extra guys in that line of scrimmage versus the 2-man fronts that you've rocked so much, just on that basis alone, I feel like would have helped a little bit more, especially if you ran some base with the Sam linebacker and you got the fifth de facto defensive lineman there on that line at that point. At the very least, it would have skirted teams away from running as much as they have. You wouldn't have as many of those 45 attempt games from teams. And I'm not saying that's 100% would have fixed everything, but I do think you would take yourself from 32 to at least like 22. And is that the difference of a couple more wins on the season to getting in the playoffs? Yeah, I do think it is. Thank you, though, BK. I appreciate you. R. Sanchez with a $2 donation. Brian Monet and Poona Ford. That's worth $14 million. Is costing us on our cap. Bollocks, I say bollocks too. I don't think neither me or Brendan really loved those deals at the time of the signing. We could kind of go, okay, there's a plan here.
I was fine with the Poona extension when it happened because back then we had him playing one tech in a 4-3, and I thought he was really good at that.
Yeah.
But last year we tried to move him to 3 tech. It didn't go that well. And this year now he's playing in a 3-4, and it's really not going well. So, yeah, you shouldn't have extended him if this was what you were going to do. But when we extended him, of course, at the time I thought, well, we're going to keep having him do what he's been doing his whole career successfully. Of course, that's just common sense, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, No's right. I didn't like it as much giving it to him because I liked him as a one tech cheap guy. I felt like you can usually get one tech run stuffers who can't give you much pass rush. You don't have to pay kind of top market prices to usually find those kind of guys, which wasn't top market prices, but you're giving him good money for that. A guy that gets you a sack a year, basically, or 2 sacks a year. In Brian Monet's case, he had done nothing on the field. At least Ford had shown you some moments. Monet hadn't really shown you anything to earn that contract extension. They were just kind of like Oprah with the car. Like, you get a car, you get a contract extension, you get a contract extension. And those guys haven't lived up to it. They're not playing to it. They're, and I don't think either guy's going to be.
Although I will say this does bring up a very good point that I think needs to be, it needs to be, everybody needs to be aware of this. You take a look at the players on our defensive line. Monet on a second contract. Ford on a second contract. Quentin Jefferson, we signed him out of free agency. LJ Collier is a first-round pick. Al Woods is a guy that we had here for a year and then extended. Mm-hmm. These are guys that we coveted, we desired. And the only guy on this defensive line who plays, who is somebody who we just kind of have to throw out there because there's nobody better, and he's just happens to be the body that we have on our practice squad, is Miles Adams. He's somebody who, okay, I can look at that and go, okay, there's no investment of any kind there, whatever. If he goes out there and does good, great. If he goes out there and sucks, then it doesn't really mean anything to me. But these other guys are guys that you chose to bring in. You chose to spend money on them. You chose to spend draft picks on them. So it's not like Carroll's making do with a bunch of chicken you-know-what here. These are guys that he willingly brought in here and in many cases spent money and draft picks on. So the excuse that he's got no talent really doesn't fly, because if we have no talent, he's the reason why, because he spent on the wrong guys.
Bingo. I mean, that's it. You can't toss that part out of it with this and just say, well, he'll get these next picks right. And as much as I love this last draft and how we had it with hitting with a guy like Tariq Woolen, Boye Mafe's been a pretty good run defender, but he's not giving you anything as far as a pass rush. And that's been one of the big things with getting some of these edge guys recently, from Rasheem Green to on down the line, Darrell Taylor, where you're bringing guys in and they're not developing and they're not giving you anything as far as pass rush goes. It gives me less hope that he's then going to pick the future guys. Because if he's gotten it wrong on the front end like this, how does he not then maybe get it wrong on the future end when you start giving him these picks to get it done? It's just not an end all be all fix. It'll help. Getting more talented will help this defense out. But I think with me and Brendon, we both look at this through the lens of how to get to an elite status of a team. And if you're a team that doesn't find the elite players, don't know how to target them, don't know how to develop them, miss a lot, swing a lot and miss. And then you have a coach that wants to invest a lot of resources into that defense on top of it, pour a lot of money and a lot of draft picks. And in an age where most teams are trying to put more of their assets into the offensive side of the ball, it's kind of a tough look, and it doesn't give me a lot of confidence, Brendon. I hope they get it. I hope they figure it out this offseason with it, but this is going to be the big question for me going into this offseason beyond, do we sign Regino or not, or whatever else? Like, that's, to me, this is going to be a number one issue, is what the hell are they going to do with this damn defense? Because it ain't right as it is right now, and just getting players in here ain't going to fix this stuff. They got to make some changes, and they got to make some big time changes, Brendon.
Right. And I want to remind everybody as well that since the Legion of Boom was blown up, the best defense the Seahawks have had since is probably 2018, a year when we had almost no talent. Somehow, despite getting the opportunity to reinvest in the defense and bring in more talent and spend more money, the defense just keeps getting worse and worse. It's like, yes, the players are definitely bad this year. Some of these players are really not very good, but it's just kind of almost weird that the ability to spend more money and the ability to have more freedom to do different things is not making this defense better.
And that's where I do come back to some of the schematic deficiencies, because maybe these guys aren't just quite this bad. Yes, some of them are bad, but maybe it also comes down to just they're not in the right scheme, or you don't have a scheme that's as workable in the state in today's day and age as it was 10 years ago. I feel like Carroll the defense worked in 85, and it worked in 95, and it worked in 2005, and it worked in 2013. But we're in a new era now. And he can't pivot off the spot, but you're in a new era. And I don't think that just running a pure cover 3 look scheme is going to work. And by the way, it's like I talked to a Niner channel yesterday, Brendon, and it's like, we're putting this Vic Fangio scheme in, but we're not really implementing it. We're taking one of his acolytes and Sean Desai to implement the scheme, but we're not really implementing it. Meanwhile, the Niners are bringing Fangio in right now as a consultant. Meanwhile, when they're about to lose their defensive coordinator this offseason, they're probably going to hire Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator to take over there. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to watch the Niners running this pure and right while we half-ass it, because Carroll wants to hold on to the half of the old scheme and half of the new with this hybridization that he talks about. It doesn't make sense. It's not going to work. Maybe I should have more faith in Carroll at this point. Maybe I should have just that blind faith. But you spoke about this. We haven't had a great defense, that Legion Boom, like we haven't even close to an elite-like defense since that era. And that 1 year in 18, you remove that 1 year, it's been bad defense after bad defense after bad defense, asset after asset after asset. How much have they poured into the safety position alone since 2017, Brendon? I mean, what has it been, like 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, multiple, like 4 third-round picks, a 5th-round pick, and you're still not getting great performance from the safety position. That's kind of my point on this, is that you have invested in places, then you still don't get good performance. So it seems like there's another answer that goes beyond just, let's just bring in the great talent. That's an answer. That's a part that'll help, but there's more that goes. I'm kind of beating the dead horse with it, Brendon, but there's just more that goes beyond it.
Yeah.
Adele is the fittest. Thank you for the $10 donation, man. $30 donations on the channel tonight, man. Thank you so much. You're very kind, brother. It says, have you seen the clips of Puna, LJ, Monet, Cody, and Jordan when they get blocked in the run? They don't even try to shed the blocks and just stand there pretty bad to look at 0% effort that game.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't, there's no edge to this defense right now. There is no, guy out there that's going out there and laying some intimidation or whatever. You just let teams kind of take it to you. You're always on your heels a little bit. You do this in your coverage. Everything's soft zone coverage, and everybody's just kind of falling backwards and preventing the big play, trying not to lose. And yeah, I've seen the same thing. This is the big issue with Cody Barton and Jordan Brooks is they can't get off blocks for their life. If they get blocked up, they're done. They're absolutely done. I mean, at least with Bobby Wagner, he had a way to kind of slip blocks. He was really good at that element of his game. Jordan doesn't have that at all. And when it comes to, Puna and LJ and Monet, I've seen the same thing from those three guys. They come out on the football field and they don't do a whole hell of a lot for me. Puna somehow came out of this game well rated by PFF. I'm not seeing it from him. I'm not.
Yeah, it seems like PFF has at least like 2 really mysterious grades per team in every game where you're just like, yeah, there's no way that's reflective of how they actually played.
Yeah. You're just sitting there going, really? Really? I mean, how do we give up that many yards on the ground with Poon out there with all those snaps he took and he was helping? I don't think so. But effort's a problem. And Dell, this is where we come back to the coaching staff as far as they've got to motivate those and get those guys ready to play. And it can't be like, well, I try to get them, you just won't listen to. So let's give me new players. I'll get those ones to listen. Are you sure you'll be able to get them to listen at this point? Or are they kind of tuning you out here a little bit? I got some worries on this, man. I don't think, like you said, it's not going to change. So it's going to be consternation on this without any kind of change because Pete's not going to move on. He's not going to go anywhere. And it's going to remain here for at least the next couple of years. But yeah.
Yeah. And like there's it goes even beyond the stuff that we're talking about. There's also like flat out, is he going senile? Like the punt at the end of the game, 6 minutes left, down 10 points. He punts on 3rd and 10.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't watch any of the post-game press conference stuff because I was, I couldn't because I was in Vegas and I was watching everything at the sports book. And of course, they only show the games. They're not going to show the post-game stuff. But I really was interested to hear how he would justify that. I still don't know what he said. I should go back and try to figure it out. But I'm sure somebody asked him why they punted in that situation. I'm really interested to hear what he would have said. But I don't see how you can defend that.
I don't think there's any way to defend it. But what rather than being like a senile thing, I think really what it is this comes down to Carroll. If it's that point of being committed to your scheme being a good thing, you want to be committed to your philosophy, you want to be committed to your scheme, you want to be committed to the way you run a football game, but then you get over committed to it to the point of you just are blindly running a game in a certain way and you're not taking any factors into account. This is a little bit of the lack of adjustments we see from the coaching staff. This is an indicator of that. This is an indicator of every week you just run the same game plan. You're not trying to adjust the opponent. You're just going to do what they do. And Carroll would say, well, we're going to make them deal with us rather than we deal with them. They have to deal with us. So it look like a lot of offenses are having to deal with us right now. Look like a lot of offenses are like having to really, oh God, that Seahawks team, they're avalanching us right and left. And I think when you talk about that play, Brendon, what I mean by this, as far as it being a force of habit for him or being a part of his defining philosophy, is he goes, I want to build my team for defense first. I want to be able to manage this game and trust my defense. I need to lean on that. And even if the defense isn't good, even if the defense has shown you they can't hold up, even if the defense has shown you they can't get a stop, Brendon, when in the history of Coach Carroll has he ever made that decision where he said, my defense sucks today. I'm in a situation where it's a 50-50 punt thing where I could or I couldn't, or the analytic part people would say, go for it with considering your defense. He's never done that. That's not, he's a guy that doesn't like to go for it on 4th down anyway, but if he's got the opportunity to trust his defense, he takes nothing into account about where that state of that defense is. It comes back to that rooted philosophy of, I trust my defense. We've got a complete team. I don't just have to lean on my offense first and foremost. This is not just heavily weighted to one side of the ball here. We're all working together. And he can't go away from that. That's my opinion on this. It's all rooted down so much. Those roots go real deep. And he can't just pull him up out of the ground and operate a different fashion or way, even when everything in the game there is telling you that he should, Brendon. Does that sound crazy or does that sound close to the mark?
I think there's some truth there. I can buy that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you though, Dell. Thank you for the double dono, man. You're awesome. Jordan with the $10 donation. Thank you, Jordan. Says Carroll's not adapting to the modern NFL is the biggest reason I didn't want him back. He refuses to adapt. And it's killing the defense. I don't know if either me or Brendan are going to be able to offer more beyond that, Jordan. I think you put pretty well where we're at with this. I had hoped this year with the Fangio defense, he was going to start to make that change as he had done on the offensive side of the ball. But Brendan, outside of them changing to some 3-4 looks this year, I guess, Matty F. Brown talks about the cover 4 being brought in as opposed to just running cover 3 and cover 2. That doesn't do a whole lot for me because cover 4 is still a drop back, deep, soft zone based defense. So it still operates from all of the same places that your other soft base zone defenses operated from. Has there been anything else to your eyes that you have seen? Do you think we're blitzing a little bit more this year? Do you see the gap and a half in going on from the defensive lineman up front, or does it look just still more of the same, just with some 3-4 looks?
I mean, nothing substantial. I think in this last game, I might have seen Quandre Diggs blitz once. Maybe it was somebody else and I just got it mixed up, but I think I saw Diggs blitz once, which, he did.
He did. No, he did. And then it was right there for the quarterback, then let the quarterback slide right out of his hands because he's lost the ability to tackle.
Okay. Yeah. So that was something we used to never do. So I guess that's different, right?
I guess you get a one blitz of a Quandre Diggs a game. I guess that's true. So you get
a season. You get
one a season. That's right. One season.
And, at the end of the day, this is a results oriented business, even if he is doing things differently. If the things that he is doing differently are leading to these terrible results, then who cares?
Yeah.
Right. Like, I saw a stat that so far this year, the Seattle Seahawks and Houston Texans are the only 2 teams in the league allowing more than 160 rushing yards a game. And they're also the only 2 teams in the last 2 decades to allow 160 rushing yards a game. So to say this is historically bad is the correct way to put it. It's not just you over exaggerating trying to make a point. No, it's the case. It is just the case.
I think Brendan's touching on something that's very important here, folks. Really listening to this about when he's talking about the rushing yards given up this year, where I was talking about in 2020, the amount of air yards you were on record pace to give up. And then 2021, this is 3 years of historically bad defense. It's not just a one situation. It's not just simply you're in a rebuild year and that's the end all be all excuse. For those out there looking for that kind of simplified answer here to explain these defensive struggles, well, it's a talent thing. No, it's very complicated. There's a lot of things that are wrong here. Talent is a part of it. I wouldn't just try to throw that all away. But a big part of this, and maybe the biggest part of this, is Carroll's designs of his defense and how he goes about running this defense right now. Not 10 years ago, right now. Not when we had Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman, right now. And I think your words on this, Jordan, are very apropos for this in the respect of it's killing the defense. This is what causes it. When you go historically bad, Brendan, I think that's a good way to describe a defense. I got a historically bad defense. My staff's probably doing a lot to kind of kill it if I got a 3-year span. I'm going to have a hard time blaming that on talent when we get into 3 years of it, because you've had time to adjust. You've had time to say, this isn't good up here. We need to go get this and this and this to fix that. And they haven't done it. Haven't done it, man.
Right. I mean, this defense, do we have any players on this defense who were on this team in 2018? Poona Ford. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Let me think here. Yeah, no, I think that's it. Because Quandre was brought in a trade.
Quentin Jefferson, I guess.
Oh yeah, Quentin Jefferson.
If you want to count that, but he left and came back, so they first didn't want him and then wanted him back. So
Justin Coleman, not even Justin Coleman. He was gone the previous year, and he also hasn't played at all since we've won. So who cares?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like what's the thing about the boat where you take the pieces off of the boat and eventually you replace everything on the boat?
When does it become a new boat?
Yeah. It's a new boat. It's a new boat. It's a new defense.
It's a new defense, new boat. And you put the parts in there to try to get this to sail. Instead, it's sinking to the bottom of the bay as you try to leave the harbor. But appreciate your $10 donation, Jordan. And I think you're right on the mark with it. This is why we're bringing this up at the head of this, is that this is the biggest thing to talk about right now beyond anything else at the moment. It just is. Sanchez, thank you for the $2 donation. Appreciate you. Double don't know, man. Says money sometimes fails. See the Colts O-line. Yeah, I think it's not going to be just going out and spending money in free agency to solve this and bringing a guy in. Free agency has been, I think, a little more successful in recent years than it was, let's say, 15 years ago, where it was a little bit of a fool's gold to go in free agency and expect you're going to fix things out there. But yeah, that's where, again, too, you're going to bring in talent. But if the scheme's not fixed and if that talent's not quite as good, or you're paying top of the end market prices for a guy like Daron Payne, to bring him in. You may not get the returns again if there's some problems there schematically speaking. The Colts are weird with that line though too. It's failed a little bit from a money standpoint, but some of those guys and who they paid, I don't know if they really should have paid on that one. Like they have some good guys. I think I like their center and their left guard, Brendan, but the other guys that they went really invested on, I was always kind of like, I don't know on those other guys.
Yeah, and what happened to that guy who's coaching over there in Indy, by the way?
Right?
Didn't didn't he get fired? Didn't somebody fall on the axe for that? So, I'm just saying.
And and you could go with, I'm sure the Colts fans out there, they're saying, we need more talent. We know more talent, but he wasn't able to get out from under that with his job. It was determined that he had enough to succeed and he wasn't doing a good enough job, which, this just speaks to, again, so many other coaches got that quick switch, Brendan, where they're just like Dr. Evil's button on his table that he can open up the floor and drop him into a fiery death, where meanwhile, Pete Carroll's button, you can just sit there and hammer it. And that opening's not going to happen.
Right.
He ain't going nowhere. But
I mean, in fairness, I think most owners really, really don't like to fire coaches and only do it when they feel like they have to.
I agree. But you do see those owners that when they recognize if it ain't right, it ain't right, then they will pull it. And for good and bad, there's ones that'll do too quick, I think, but there's others they understand if it's not if the right point is not like the Niners, like Tom Sula that they had before Shanahan there after Harbaugh left. They didn't sit on Tom Sula for a long period of time and went, get off, not the right one, move to the next. And it proved smart.
Tom Sula was basically a janitor. They just stuck in there for a year. I think they knew that. But actually, after Tom Sula, it was Chip Kelly for 1 year, right?
That's right. So it was Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, but they didn't stay with Chip Kelly for long either.
That's a good example. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're moving, you got to move fast if it's not the right one. But we're moving molasses slow in regards to this one. And there's just not going to be any change anytime soon. And hopefully those coaching staff can pull Carroll's ear this offseason and say, okay, put the Fangio scheme in. Stop with your old crap. Stop with the soft zone defenses. You're not stopping anybody. You're not doing anything well. There's nothing you can hang your hat on this defense right now. Nothing at all. And it would be great to try to figure out something that you can, whether you're good or bad, at least you can be good in an area and then maybe build out of that.
Yeah. So last offseason, you take away Carroll's personnel control, and this offseason, you take away his control of the defense. At that point, does he just go like, well, I guess I don't do anything here? Like at that point, what does he do? Is he like Nathaniel Hackett just standing there on the sideline?
I wouldn't, honestly, I would think there's a chance to me that you're a better team if Carroll took his hands off of both sides of the ball and let the coaches run those sides of the ball. Let him be the figurehead. Let him be the motivator. Let him be the guy that, can look at everything from the 10,000 mile up. I personally feel like that's what coaches should be doing more often than not than anyway. I don't like coaches having this heavy hand on one side of the ball or the other side of the ball. I think they should hire assistants to do that. It's more about compartmentalizing, Brendan. It's hard to do multiple jobs at once in the NFL, be it a general manager and a head coach, or to be a head coach and an offensive coordinator. It's too much. And I think that in Carroll's standpoint, he would do better to just pull off of that a little bit and just go, okay, this is your guys. This is yours, guys. I'm going to run this from the top down a little bit more, rather than it being about my scheme, my system that's no longer working. Paul Third with a $5 don't know. Thank you, Paul. Hope you're doing well out there tonight. This is the betting tubers are advising to take the Hawks. Apparently the San Francisco team are too comfortable after the Bucks and aren't ready to play it tough in Seattle.
Wouldn't it be just like this team to, after everything that's happened over the last month, find a way to beat the 49ers?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to predict everything to type on this, Paul, and this is certainly a game that could be absolutely one that is not like what we kind of think at first blush of it being, well, Niners run the ball tremendously. They've got a great defense. They don't give up anything in the rushing game. They're going to hit you by 2 touchdowns minimum in this one. I mean, that's what you see at first blush here. But Niners are really beat up. A lot of injuries across the board. Short week, traveling out to Seattle. Maybe they are a little bit after a big win after Tampa Bay. Maybe there's a little bit of a slacking back, a little bit of a feeling on that, especially in a Thursday night game. It's possible. It wouldn't shock me, to Brendan's point on this, Paul, to see that happen. I don't know. I would predict it. I think we're both, we'll be doing this show on Brendan's side, I think tomorrow. And I don't think either of us are going to come out the prediction of saying Seattle will win this game, but it wouldn't blow me away. Like that would be like the most shocking win of the year if we pulled it off. It's a division matchup, Thursday night football, short week. Their injury situation completely makes sense if it went that way.
I mean, it's kind of sad that we don't think we're going to win this game, right? The Niners are probably going to have Josh Johnson at quarterback. And immediately, every Seahawks fan knows it doesn't even matter. The
Mhm.
quarterback does not matter because we can't stop the run.
Well, and you're
Oh,
right.
man.
It's annoying, but it's also you just think of the history. I mean, Nick Mullins. How many times did that squishy faced bastard tear our defense apart with when Garoppolo was out with Shanahan? And we're getting our butts whooped right now, Brendan, on both lines of scrimmage. And I mean, football does get kind of simple really quickly in certain respects of things. And if you're getting your butt whooped, they're pulling your pants down and they are smacking your cheeks, playing and play out on both lines of scrimmage. It doesn't kind of matter what you got skill position wise or Tariq Woolen, the avatar out there, or anything else. You're just going to probably lose the game. It does kind of come down to that where if you're drawing to more of a draw, Brendan, if you're getting some wins with the losses at those line of scrimmage, but right now we're losing on the line of scrimmages completely. We can't create any holes in the running game, and teams are nonstop creating holes in the running game on us. And that's effort, that's will, that is some talent to do with that too. But hard to see this fixing that all of a sudden when it's been such a bad part of the team for the majority of this year.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess it would just be just like this team to win this game. So I'll hold out a little bit of hope there. But yeah, good luck in getting me to predict the Seahawks to win any game for the rest of the season at this point. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I would give us the Rams game at this point as far as for sure, and I'll see where I land on that Jets game is where their quarterback situation and where they're playing at. But it is hard to when you're playing like this, it's hard to predict wins for your team. Football's a tough sport. Football still is a very sport that comes down to those trenches, and you've got to be able to do something in those trenches. You can't just get whooped at every turn. And we're kind of finesse right now. Good pass blockers, right? I mean, the weird thing to me, Brent, is like looking at this deeper on this issue. It's like even a Damian Lewis type. Lewis is having a good season from left guard. He is. He's transitioned there. He's having a good season. But go look at the PFF grade from this last week. It's a great indicator of what I've seen off of his scores throughout the year and also what I've seen from an eye test wise, which is you thought moving to the left guard, taking on 3 techs now, he becomes more dominant as a run blocker and then becomes worse as a pass blocker because those were sort of the strengths and deficiencies of his game when he was on the right side. Instead, he's been marvelous as a pass blocker at left guard this year. And then we're starting to see his run blocking grade continually going down throughout the course of the year. It's odd. And I don't have an explanation for it, quite frankly, really on that. But, that's been.
It's just another one of those things that as a Seahawks fan, you just sound like a crazy person sometimes because this stuff doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It just doesn't add up. It's like there's no way that makes any kind of sense that he suddenly now can't. He had a horrible run blocking grade in this game. You're going, okay, well, you do have Derek Brown. He's tough to deal with. Okay, but Derek Brown's also a 1 tech. So shouldn't he? You're over on the left side. You should have been dealing with really the 3 tech most of the day at that point.
Is it possible that it's just a reflection of the fact that we didn't have any running backs that were competent and couldn't run the ball at all, and that just kind of trickles down to him?
I kind of feel like it's not, because this is the problem I've seen with Kenneth Walker and I saw it with Rashad Penny too. And those guys, what they did, I think in the early part of the year, Brendan, is they had big runs, which offset things a little bit. But if you and I diagrammed out play in and play out our running game this year, the amount of no gains or negative yard gains or penetration into the backfield early on the play, too many of those plays that occurs. And that stuff's going to, I didn't see holes for Travis Homer in this game. I didn't see, he had 5 yards to be had there if he just put his head down and go forward. Everything was getting closed up. They were getting driven back. You weren't even getting the 3 yards in a cloud of dust stuff like the Panthers were doing to us with Foreman. You were -1 yards. You're right at the line of scrimmage. You could not even get an inch pushed forward at times. And I can't blame that on the back because I've seen it with Kenneth Walker and Rashad. And those guys will have the thing they have that Homer doesn't is that they can just self-create a 50-yard run all of a sudden to kind of make their day look better at the end of the day with it. But playing and play out and running the ball, you're getting blown off of the line of scrimmage. You're getting bullied.
Okay. I buy it.
Thank you though, Paul. Appreciate you, man. Sanchez with a $2 donation says, just load the box and see what happens to our defensive backs.
Yeah.
I would love to see it. I mean, hey, what do you got to lose, right?
A day late and a dollar short on this one, though, because that Panthers game was a perfect opportunity to do it, and you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would have done, is essentially the opposite of what they did in this game, Sanchez. You load the box, you bring the 8th defender up, you play some press coverage on the outside, you run Quandary Diggs in a cover 3 high look all day long, and you force Sam Darnold to throw some hole shots and beat you with his arm. But they let him off the hook, man. All he had to do was dink and dunk all day, Brendan. Dink, dink, dunk, dink, dunk, dink, dunk. Just little flat throws all day long. It was so
Yeah.
frustrating. But
I mean, there's
I'm
still
with,
time, right? Because the rest of this season, you're gonna get either Brock Purdy or Josh Johnson. You're gonna get Mike White, and you're gonna get Baker Mayfield. Still a couple opportunities for you to do it, but you got to do it.
Yeah. If just to try something new for next year, to see that, well, we can implement this if this goes this way again. We tried this out in these games and it kind of worked with this. We can maybe go back to it again. But just to do something different, Sanchez, just something different other than trying the same thing, like the old Einstein quote of trying the same thing is the definition of insanity when it continues to fail over and over again and expecting it to change, which it won't.
Yeah. Yeah. And which is also, I believe, an incorrect quote. I don't think that's a very good definition of insanity. That sounds like optimism to me more than insanity.
Yeah, I mean, I think insanity applies to me a little bit because it's the expectation level that you're going to see something different, despite the fact you have the results continually being wrong, as though just surely that it has to get right eventually, like it's a coin that you're flipping, as opposed to it being controlled by actual forces at play, by strategy, by the way you're guiding and directing the team. It's not a matter of, we're in like No Country for Old Men. It's like, call it. You're flipping a coin. It's no, there's more control here than that. This is not randomized. I think a little bit like that, which I'd apply if it was something else. That's where I see it as insanity. I know it is a misapplied quote, and it's supposedly not even Einstein ever said it, but
yeah,
I do think it's applicable, because you do see people do this where they will. It's also sunk cost fallacy. You hear about this, right, Brendan? Where it's like, well, we've already poured all this money into it, so we have to keep pouring money into it because we already poured this money into it, rather than going, wait, we've poured all this money into it. It ain't working. Maybe we need to stop pouring money into it. And I think that's a little bit of where we've landed with this defense a little bit. That's exactly why I come down to the line of saying, talent, yes, but,
yeah.
Thank you though, Sanchez. I agree, man. I'd love to see them load up that box, a little press coverage. I wouldn't mind it. Daniel Bailey with a $2 donation says, have you guys looked close at the October defensive tape?
I assume this refers to that month where the defense was playing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've looked at most of it. The main difference is we used a lot less two-man fronts. It was like we were using two-man fronts 70% of the time the first 5 games, and then the next 4 it was like 50. Obviously Barton was on the field a lot less. I think teams have just figured out, just don't put that many receivers on the field, and they'll have to put Barton out there. They're going to be obligated to put 2 linebackers out there. You just have to put the right personnel out there to force that. And there was like that 1 month where things worked really well because we were able to get Barton off the field without creating some giant mismatch. And now that teams have figured it out, I don't know what the counter is. There might not be one. It might not exist.
Yeah, I've been the same. I've looked at the D. I think Brennan's 2 points about, first off, Daniel, the 2-man fronts that were implemented at the high rate that they were through the first part of the year. Big part of the change that happened in October was that. And then I do think as well, to my eyes, you were facing some teams there. San Diego, Herbert's got the big arm, but he's kind of famous for so many throws at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. Same thing with that Cardinals offense that wants to dink and dunk you. Same thing with that Giants offense that wants to dink and dunk you. When I watched the tape, it felt like we were squeezing down the shorter routes a little more tighter, and that those have become a little bit more looser as the years gone along, and looser at the expense of those guys dropping deep and trying to take away deep shots, which has not been a problem at any point this year, Brennan. We've not given up deep plays over the top. Can you remember the last guy that's completed a bomb on us up over the top?
Let me think here. It's been a minute. It's definitely been a minute. But what good is it, right? What good is it?
Yeah. What good is it? If you're not if you're building your whole defense to take you away that deep ball that's never thrown by the opposition, and this is why I say that a little bit of Carroll's defense has seen its day, is because back in 85, 95, 05, 2013, offenses would be impatient. Look at how many interceptions quarterbacks threw in the 80s and 90s versus now. It's a huge, stark difference. You were trying to push the ball up the football field. There was more of that chance that you were going to get an offense that was going to be impatient and try to take their shot. Now, offenses, you said it earlier, they've got the book on this defense, and the book is beyond this year of just hammering in the running game. It's if I was to put one thing under as far as to attack Carroll's defense, one word, and you underline that word and you apply it both the run game and the pass game, patience. Patience. Take your time, be patient, and you will beat his defense. That's all it really requires. It's just dump my coffee. Hold on one sec.
Oh boy. Mm-hmm. Everything okay over there?
Oh yeah, it's a small dump. It's okay.
All right.
I've done worse. So it's I come down to a little bit of that, Daniel. It is on for me on the tape. What Brendon said about the 2-man fronts, the less Barton on the field, more Ryan Neal at that time. Those were really the factors, but it also felt like you were squeezing these zones down. And now those have opened up. The Raider game and this past game, especially, you really saw us allowing those short passes to happen right and left over and over again. Brendon mentioned the bubble screen where the guy literally falls down, gets up, and Jordan Brooks missed that tackle there. There's 2 other guys in that play also missed tackles on that guy as he got off the football field. And you go on that and you go, man, everything's so loosey-goosey. You're not pressing everything. I saw somebody mention in the chat, Jordan Brooks has only 2 tackle for losses this entire season. I think Bobby Wagner had that in the game he played against us. He had 2 tackle for losses. You're not taking it to anybody. It's just a lot of up on your heels, sort of just waiting for the impact to happen a little bit across the board, up front and with the linebackers. So that would be the main place I would apply to it, Daniel, as far as what I saw from a difference. Thank you though for the donation, man. I appreciate you. So I did promise you a fairly quick show today, so we're not going to pull you too long, but let's talk a little bit about the other side, because I think we have beat this defense to death. And rightfully so. We need to take a couple sticks to it, Brendon. You know what I mean? This needs a little bit of that. But let's look at this offense, because they didn't have a great day on their other side of it. And, I do think with the offense, I have a little bit more room to believe that if you add talent in certain places on this offense, when it comes to, for instance, the issues in running the ball, that will get more consistent. The answer some people are applying to the defensive side of the ball, I feel like I'm more acceptable to that offensive side of the ball, because Waldron's shown you he can get things done from a schematic standpoint, that he is not limited like we are defensively. Is that a fair assessment of things on that?
Yeah. I mean, this offense, look, you want to look at the big picture here. The offense is 6th in the league right now in points. They are one of the best offenses in the league. So even if you are a little down on them from this most recent game, the body of work has been really good. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it would be foolish to bail on your positive thoughts on the offense just because of one bad game that I don't even think was that bad. It wasn't atrocious. It was just kind of forgettable.
Yeah. I mean, you still found a way to put 24 points up on the board, which if you're having bad days and you're putting 24 points up on the board, offensively speaking, it's not like the D got a pick 6 or something on their side of it. And so, yeah, it was definitely not the greatest day, but they did kind of find a way through with no running game. I hear some from this game, Brendon, about Geno being, exposed recently. That sounded bad, but that he's essentially, he's had so many turnover-worthy throws that just haven't been picked off. And so that really he's not having as good a season as the stats bear out, because if people had just intercepted those balls, then he'd be middle of the road, and he's really not that good, and he's coming to earth and all that. Where do you stand on your assessment of Geno Smith kind of on the heels of this game?
I think that statement applies to every quarterback. There are a lot of dropped interceptions in this league. Mm-hmm. I think that every quarterback benefits from that. And I don't know if Geno benefits more than others, but I remember watching the Dolphins-Steelers game earlier this year. Tua threw like 8 passes in that game that should have been picked off. And they just all got dropped. So that is just kind of the cost of doing business in the NFL. There's a reason why these guys play defense. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really buying that part of it. Now, it is definitely noticeable that Geno's playing a little more out of control lately. He doesn't seem to be quite as comfortable back there. But my thing is, I think it makes sense for him to play a little more wild when he's got this bad of a defense backing him up. He can't afford to play carefully. You can't afford to play carefully when you know your defense is going to get destroyed every time they touch the field. You got to take chances to try to get a bunch of points on the board. You're going into these games knowing I probably have to score 40 points for us to win. So that means I can't afford to just avoid all throws that carry risk. I can't afford to just sit back and just wait for the easy throws. No, I'm going to have to take these risks sometimes. And sometimes it's not going to work out. But for the most part, I can't get that upset at Geno for any of that stuff. I also wonder if he might be playing through a little bit of an injury. I know he showed up on the injury report last week. You could see there were a couple plays where it seemed like the ball just came out of his hands weird. So
agreed.
I don't know. I'm not too upset at Geno. He did play a bad game against the Panthers. I think that's a fair statement. But I'm just not that interested in killing him right now. He's the least of my concerns.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't think he's anywhere near the head of the problems that we've got to be talking about or dealing with. And I do think too, Brendan, a part of it, everything you said there is, I think, right on point. I think another issue with it is that when you don't have a running game and you're finding yourself having to throw, you're going to find yourself on a lot of drives in 3rd and 9s, 3rd and 10s, with our running game getting negative yards, sometimes 3rd and 11s. And that when you have a quarterback then that has to hold that ball for a long period of time and wait for those long developing routes to develop, and the defense knows you're trying to push those routes down the field to get the first downs in those moments, harder to complete those throws, harder to get that done. And I would offer with you that the combination of the lack of defense and then no running game really does make it hard to play the quarterback position at that point, whether it's Geno or anybody else. Then you're not really going to find many quarterbacks that are going to find an ability to be successful dealing with those two issues on the other side of things. And so I don't land on that side of it. I do say as well, we are getting to a place we're hearing more talk about maybe a contract extension there with Geno Smith. Where are you kind of at the moment with that, as far as, do you have a price in mind that you're good with it at this point? Are you kind of like, I'm still making an assessment with them on, I want to see how this all just kind of fully finishes out this year to kind of figure out where I stand on what you'd be willing to do with him on a deal? Like, give me kind of maybe a number if you would, or you wouldn't.
I mean, I'm still good with like 35 mil a year. I think that's the going rate for the way he's playing right now. I just like having options, We could keep Geno. We could trade Geno after putting the tag on him. We could go with Drew Lock in 2023. We could go with rookie X in 2023. Like, it's just nice having these options. I'm not going to marry myself to any one thing right now.
Yeah.
As of this moment, I'm still inclined to believe that keeping Geno for at least another couple years is in our team's best interests. But I acknowledge that there are some appealing options beyond that. And there's really isn't that much we could do regarding Geno that we can do that would make me unhappy.
No, me neither. I mean, and you could sign Geno, still go draft a quarterback. I'd be okay with that. And getting even early if you wanted to. It wouldn't pull me back from that. I do like the thought process of bringing in a guy where it's not, whether it's Locke or it's Geno, of having a guy maybe a little bit more ready to go, because I think the roster might be a little bit more closer to being ready to go. I know we speak about the defensive things, and that's going to be what it is. It either is here or it isn't. But on getting better as a team, getting more talented as a team, getting a team this year that was right on the precipice of pushing for a division title, adding a little more talent with the money you could have to spend, having a quarterback that's not trying to just figure out and learn how to play the game versus a guy that can be kind of proficient and be ready to go, maybe a little bit of a better route to go. Doesn't, again, preclude me from wanting to draft quarterback, Brendan, but would you lean a little bit if you had to make a choice between and put a Drew and a Geno in the same boat on this one, or a Lamar Jackson, or any kind of would you like to see more of to next year's team having that veteran quarterback in there, or you're equally open to being a rookie or being a veteran?
I mean, I'm leaning towards Geno. I think I'm leaning to Geno, but it's not. I wouldn't be disappointed by pretty much anything we do.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I'm not going to be shedding tears on a variety. It's like I said, first world problems, right, Brendan? It's number 2 overall pick, and you got money to spend, and you got a pretty solid foundation to work off of. So, there's a lot of ways you can go. You got a lot of flexibility. Snail with the $2 donation says, the problem has been we're not running well. Thank you for the $2 donation, Snail. And I do think that that's offensively, that is the big problem right now. I think the passing game becomes much more proficient and deadly if you have a running game that can average over 4 yards a carry right now, which is a pretty low marker at the end of the day. But even just that, I think would be able to keep defenses honest. But it seems like, Brendon, right now, defenses aren't really having to play too honest with us in that running game. They don't have to devote extra resources. They know they can hem it up and stop it down.
Looks like Walker's going to be ready for this next game, though, by the way, for whatever that's worth.
We need him. You know, I mean, we're gonna need all hands on deck on this one, and especially with him, where if there won't be those holes, I don't think, with this defensive line, but at least with Walker, maybe he can get you that 60, 65-yard carry, a backbreaker carry, or a game-changing kind of carry on him, because he's able to create all on his own at times, and maybe that'll be the way that you can do it. But we're built to be a balanced offense here, Snail. We're not built to be an offense thrown 72% of the time as we did this last Sunday. We need to have a little bit more of that. But unfortunately, if you're getting not even a 1 yard per carry, you know, I mean, I think Homer had the 12-yard carry, Brendon, and then everything else was a negative or a 1 yard gain, I think, just about on the day.
And think about how ridiculous this is. Geno Smith is a quarterback who was a backup last year, a backup for the last 8 years in the NFL. We gave him a $7 million contract. We made him compete for the starting job. And now we're asking him to carry the whole team. And we're supposed to get infuriated with him when he is less than perfect in that role. Like, come on, guys.
I know, it's a great point. And I've said the same thing in my chat at times. Like, it speaks out how much expectations have changed on this guy, that it's like you almost, there's a view of he needs to play perfect from some folks. You know, I hear some of that in the chat where it's like, you have this, I can feel within what you're saying that you have an expectation he had to have played perfect. Like, he doesn't get a running game, defense is crap, but yet he's still supposed to go out there and throw for 350 yards and 120 quarterback rating, when very few quarterbacks in this sport could really do that. And maybe there's only 2 or 3 that really can pull that kind of thing off. And even then, I don't think they can do it on a consistent basis. If they're having to do that week in, week out, I think they're going to have their share of failures in there too. Your Allens and your Mahomes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So thank you though, Snail. Appreciate you. And I think you're very much on point with that one. Snail with another donation. Thank you, Snail. It says, I wish they'd gone more 3 tight end when the run isn't there. Seems like there's been an absence of the 3 tight end looks for seeing it a little bit more early on the year. Does that seem the same way to you too?
Yeah, tight end usage in general was a little lower this game. Only 3 catches combined. Fant only played about 55% of the snaps. Disley, in particular, barely got on the field, it felt like. I don't know what's going on there. I know he was on the injury report, but that's a little bit of a mystery to me. I did notice in this game, we went 3 receiver almost the whole game.
Yeah.
We were in 3 wide receiver sets almost the whole game. Maybe there was some mismatch that we were trying to take advantage of there. And I'm not going to criticize it, because Marquise Goodwin might have been our best player. Honestly, he had a great game. He was awesome.
All 3 of your receivers won the, I think, top 5 of the PFF rankings for this game, to your point on that. So,
Right.
You know, they did their job on the outside and getting open, catching the ball when it's thrown to them, and doing what they needed to do. And maybe there was a little bit of just trying not to get Carolina in their base and get them more into nickel and take advantage of their slot corner a little bit more. Makes some sense. Snail, I would like to see a little more of the 3 tight end set, though. I feel like it was a unique thing to us. It felt like we used it in all different areas too. We put the 3 tight ends to one side of the line. We put 2 out in the backfield with the running back behind Geno. We were very diverse in how we kind of unwrapped it, and it made defenses, I think, struggle a little bit on how to play it and what kind of personnel packages to come out and match it with. But it's been done away with a little bit. You're just seeing a very tiny bit of the sprinkling of it, Snail. And I'm not sure, you know, maybe like Brendon said, maybe with Disley, you had the injury with him and you just didn't want to go with it as much of that, take advantage of Carolina with the 3. But it's been a couple games situation, you know, that we're seeing on with this team right now, as far as using that 3 tight ends and going to more 3 wide, like Brendon was saying on that.
Right.
Was there anything else you saw offensively that stuck out to you in this game that was worth mentioning in your takeaways of it?
I thought both our tackles played really well. That was cool.
I did too. Yeah, I mean, Cross led the board for you in the PFF rankings in this game. I said at the beginning of this year, Brendon, if they can just play a little bit above average in their PFF rankings by the end of the year, if we can arrive at both of them sitting around a 68, 69 grade, what that could do for this offense. And I think a big part of why you've been basically a top 5 to top 10 like offense for majority of the season is you're getting that really solid play from those 2 tackles week in and week out, at least in pass protection minimum. But they were impressive. They were very, very impressive up front. The rest of the interior wasn't doing much. Blythe keeps getting blown away, and Gabe and Phil have just completely last few weeks have really eroded from the play on the field with those guys too.
I mean, the good
So,
news is it's easy to find a right guard. So if we got to kick both those guys out and find a new one, it's easy.
well, it's like and look at these centers. I think the centers will drop into the second round, the top ones. I don't think they're going to be as talented as some of the centers that have come out in recent drafts, but they'll be good and solid. And you see a guy with Linderbaum who went to the Baltimore Ravens this year, who the Seahawks were looking at. They were trying to trade up in the first round to go back and get him in last year's draft, Brendon. He's having a really good year for the Panthers. It does go to Shea, like Creed Humphrey did in his first year, does give you a little bit of confidence to believe if we go get a center and play him as a rookie. There's been some recent track record of guys that aren't picked in the top 10, not top 20, not top 25, right? Guys picked into that second round range who are coming out and giving you outstanding seasons from the center position right from the jump. And maybe there's a little bit of hope in that. And I do think if you add two more guys in that line, Brendon, good right guard, good center, especially two guys that can really drive guys off the ball, I think that will help this running game out tremendously into the future, especially the second year returns of Cross and Lucas, right?
Right. I can't think of too much else other than that, though. I mean, the running game being bad is kind of expected, honestly. I'm not even that upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, despite having no running game, you were still able to find a way to put up 24 points. I can't be that upset about it. So it's not great, but it's not bad either.
No. And he made some great throws. Going back, watch some of those Geno throws. That Tyler Lockett touchdown, the back of the end zone for the toe tap. It's hard. That's a tough quarterback throw for a quarterback because they can not put the right kind of, it's that layered throw where it's like got to be just enough on it, but not too much. You don't want to sail it, but then you want to under it and let the defender undercut the route and make an interception, which can sometimes happen with quarterbacks. So I thought that was really, he had some really tremendous throws in this game. On top of those ones, like you said, where it did seem like that arm might be bothering him a little bit, especially on the out routes where he just couldn't quite get enough mustard to get it to those out routes. You could see the defender having a chance to kind of catch up, and he was able to kind of slip that in early on in the year at times a little bit better. Taker 610 with a $2 donation says, do Harris and Fant have a future here? That's a good question.
Well, they're both under contract next year, so they at least have that much of a future, especially Fant because his contract is fully guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Harris is a pretty good player, so I don't really have a problem with it there. I think he is our best defensive lineman this year, him and maybe Al Woods, I guess. But I think Shelby Harris is the one guy on the defensive line who can really actually like make plays.
He's a good overall player. I think if you're asking him to be the best guy in your line, he's not going to be that, is Shelby. But if you put him as a guy that's in the rotation as part of a really solid front, he can be a key member of that rotational point, I think. And both guys are going to be here beyond this year. Taker 610. I don't think though you're going to look at having either of the two signed to a contract extension beyond next year. With that said, you could be a team in a position to compete, and these guys will help that team out on both sides of the ball as they have this year. I think, especially in Harris's, even though it's not guaranteed, you're going to move on from Monet. You're going to move on from Poona Ford. You're going to move on from Quentin Jefferson. You're going to probably want to keep one guy in the room there as that steady force into this offseason. And I do think I can't see how either of those guys aren't here next year. And Fant's been solid.
Yeah, Fant had strung together some real nice games before yesterday.
He had. I mean, he's going to come out at the end of the year of 600 yards receiving, and he's going to have blocked pretty well in pass protection, and he'll have done okay as a run blocker. And I think that for the money you're getting from him, that's fine. You know, it's fine. And he'll be a member of next year's team. Him and Disley, I think, are a good combination. Then you have Parkinson. You're feeling set at the tight end position with as much as you have to deal with this offseason. Maybe to have one positional group, Brendon, that you can go, okay, we're okay there at least through next year. You know, we can. Though there are a lot of tight ends in this draft. So, you never know. Thank you, though, Taker 610. So each of us, I think, are on 1 year. You see have an extension for either beyond next year?
Fant is a possibility, but we'll have to see how he does next year. Harris is going to be too old, I think.
Yeah. So probably 1 year, Taker. Probably 1 year. Roy Froelich, thank you for the $20 donation. My goodness, that's very kind of you, man. You are awesome for doing so. Says, I hope you are both having a Merry Christmas. Well, you can get together with the family this year, Brendon?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, it's mostly just my brother and his wife. But yeah, we'll be doing that.
I'll be doing the same. I got a father up here that's close to me, and the rest of the family's kind of spread out. But yeah, it'll be a great Christmas, Roy. It seems like it's setting up to be nice, just kind of chilled, laid back one. Hopefully, our Seahawks are giving us some good things to feel good about. Some Merry Christmas spirit from our Hawks winning.
Yeah, I have a
that would-
feeling all the good vibes are going to come from the Broncos.
yeah, we're gonna probably just have to celebrate that as much as anything else. But what a celebration that is! Number 2 pick in the draft, Brendon.
Yeah.
Woof, woof. Doesn't get better than that, brother. Doesn't get better than that.
Next
Thank
2
you.
games going to be telling.
It will. It will. Are you still kind of landing on, I think I may have asked you this. I forgot what you said. And King Bomber, no, Linderbaum's on not the Panthers. He's on the Ravens. What would you like to do at number 2? Now that we do know maybe we're going to be in that number 2 spot. If we land there, what would be your ideal option?
I think my ideal would be to trade down 2 spots with somebody who wants the quarterback, be it Stroud or Young, who's ever there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take whoever is left between Carter and Anderson.
There we go. All right.
Because I think trading down 2 spots, you could probably get another second rounder.
Mm-hmm. I'd say so. And a high second rounder probably at that. Picking another pick up at the top of that second round to just move back that couple spaces. I'm the same. Boy, getting in that high at the 2 versus where we had thought maybe this would be at 4 or 5 a month ago, to get in that 2 and knowing you move back a couple spaces, but you're still at the high tier 1 side of things in the draft. That's a tasty position to be in, Brendon. And like you said, as much as you can pull back in resources, you're still getting a great player on that player you pull back to, you know? So, one more here. Sorry. Another donation. And Roy, thank you for the big fat $20 donation. You are awesome, brother. I appreciate you. Kesey Brown with a $2 donation says in the draft, pick 16, could we convert a tackle to inside offensive line, like a guard or a center?
Happens all the time.
It does, Casey. It does happen all the time. I will say that it does tend to be when a team is looking to make that transition, it doesn't seem to like it's ever done really as much for a first round guy. Seems like if you're drafting a first round guy to be a tackle, you're drafting to be a tackle. If you're drafting a guy to be guard, he's a guard, or center is center. And the centers and guards obviously don't get picked in the first round very often anyways. But I think that's also indicative of why you don't see guys move from tackle to guard in the first round, is because the value in the NFL is not that guards or centers should be really taken in the first round unless they're just outstanding talents. So I don't think you would do it at pick 16 in the first round with our first round pick. But would you do it in the second or third round on one of these guys that might be a tackle that you want to move inside? Especially because, Casey, we want mobile-based offensive linemen, and a quick way to often get there is you move guys over, right? You take the tackle who's got some really good athleticism and you move him to guard. Now he's got great athleticism for a guard. Or same thing, true to a center. If you want to move him into a center and you try to really build up some athleticism and quickness then from your interior of your line that way. So it's absolutely a valid way of an approach to go. Seattle's not tended to take guys to move position. They'll take a guy like Posick and then move him around, but it's not because they're trying to, Brendon, I think you agree with this, put him at left guard or something. It's because they're trying to get the versatility. And if we have injuries, we can move him over there and we know he can hold up.
Yeah, I think more than anything, you just do it because you want him on the field in some capacity.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not a big track record of them moving guys like that necessarily. If they pick a guy to be at a position, he kind of tends to stay mostly there. And if they're going to move him, it's to fill in. And it's only for a hot cup of coffee, basically time period wise, for as long as he's going to play that before he goes back to his other one. So probably not likely to happen, Casey. It's a possibility, but not in the first round. And they just haven't had much of a track record in doing it. So. But thank you. I appreciate you guys all on the donations. I like it quite a bit. And I watch Cooper Bebe is great. Brendon, that's the guy to look at for left guard for you, by the way. In my early look-see is go take a look at that guy. As far as I haven't seen a lot of good left guards here. Voorhees guy ain't that good out of USC, but this kid I think has potential of a first round grade on him, does Bebe at the end. He's kind of in that same Zion Johnson, I think, spot that he was last year in that same territory, but really solid player. It was good to finally have a guard jump off the tape for me because I've seen some trash cans so far that just can't move past a yard to their left or right very much. Well, Brendon right now is a little bit under the weather, folks, so we're not going to keep him too long today. So we're going to do kind of a quick in and out sort of show. Brendon, is there any other kind of thoughts that you had coming out of this game or just in general in regards to this team that, we might not have covered?
Go Mariners.
Go Mariners is right. That's right. What's the next move we're making with the Mims this offseason? Are we done?
I kind of feel like we're keeping the powder dry for Ohtani at this point. That honestly just kind of feels like we don't want to overextend ourselves, so we have a real shot at Ohtani. Which, hey, if we can get Ohtani, I'm good with it. But
You think the Angels would trade him?
it feels like they're gonna try to bend over backwards to appease him and get him to stay.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm the Angels, it makes sense for them to move him, I think, from their standpoint, where their roster is and
Yeah,
where
I
their
mean, I think they should, but I don't think they will. I think they're just going to be like, this guy's so good, we have to. It's kind of like what the Packers did with Rodgers when he asked out, and they were just like, no,
Yeah.
like retire if you want to, but we're not trading you. You're too good. You're too valuable.
And we'll give you double the money to get you to shut up. So it was a little bit of both with that on that. So yeah, Ohtani would be a dream, dude. If we could pick him up, I mean, not only what you bring for he brings to the team, but that frees up a spot then to move a guy out of the rotation, because he'd slide right into that rotation then as well. So then you're able to add as well on top of him if you could. That would be an absolute dream scenario. And we're competing with the Astros if we can get Ohtani. I mean, it's you're right there with them on that, where it goes. Well, we got Thursday night game here. I'm going to be, as long as Brendon does not keel over tonight, and as he can get some Robitussin going there, we will be over on his side of the channel tomorrow. And if you guys are not, go over to Seahawks Brendon Nelson here on YouTube. Go over to his channel and get subscribed. Me and him do 2 shows a week on each side of our YouTube channel. So we will be back tomorrow, Wednesday, 7 o'clock, Brendon, because we got no game. Yeah,
7 o'clock sounds good to me.
So we will be back on 7 o'clock to preview the San Francisco matchup. It's going to be us previewing it like this the whole time, just peeking through going, oh God, it's horrible. Oh no. So we're going to try to explain to you guys how we magically pull this win out when a lot of forces are against us. So it's going to be a fun breakdown of that team. But thank you, Brendon, for being a trooper tonight and coming in here and hanging in. I know you've been fighting through that cold today, so I really do appreciate you coming on in here and talking shop a little bit with me on the Seahawks team.
All right. Sounds good to me, man. I will see you tomorrow, and thank you for having me out here.
I appreciate it, brother. Well, folks, you guys have a good night. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. But beyond all that, don't you ever forget, even as the season goes a little into a tough place as it's been as of now, keep that hope, faith. Keep it looking for the eye on the prize in the future. Think about that second pick in the first round and the second round pick that'll be right up at the top of the second round as well. In addition to that, keep that at the forefront of your thoughts. Keep that optimism going, folks. And don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.